Just wait. Get the third one down before you make that joke.
All right, let me get a formal intro out here for the YouTube channel, and then we'll actually go. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well, and it is time for a conversation, an interview with Nick Hexum and George Clanton, who have made some wonderful music together recently that we will discuss, and anything else that comes up in the midst of this conversation too. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for coming through. George is a lot less enthused, but let's see if we can get some answers out of him. Specifically this one, because I mean I've interviewed your ass before. If it wasn't for Nick, I would not have you back. So let's just thank him and get that out. Let's just get that out of the way. But the last time I talked to you, we had a pretty deep and in-depth conversation about a lot of things, like the mindset and ideology behind your music, behind Vaporwave, some of your biggest musical influences. And the one that stood out to me and to a lot of people who watched the interview is that you were just such a die-hard, like totally unironic, just 311 fan. And that was something that just stood out to a lot of people. It stood out to me, certainly. And in the time since that interview, you've clearly made this connection to not only Nick, but other members of the band, I assume. And now you're collaborating on music together. You've just dropped this record. Like, how did we get from there to here? Fill in that gap for me.
I was probably already like talking to Nick at that time and
so you were hiding that from me.
Yes, I had to.
Oh wow!
Just like what we were talking about before, you're always hiding something, in the music. And if you're a dazzler like I am, you've got to hide things so that you can dazzle people at just the perfect moment.
Got it.
But was the question, how did we get to this point? I mean,
now that the cat's out of the bag and you've talked about, you basically being besties with Nick for probably much longer than I've been aware, still, how did we reach point A to point B to where we're actually getting together, collaborating, making music together?
So I think
it was 2 years ago now, wasn't it? Just right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell the story. You came to a show.
Well, you told the story last time, so I was like, well, I'll do it. Nick's a better Tory Stellar. Nick is better at talking than I am, so I like to let him take whatever. But I think specifically what it was, like I'm always kind of, talking about 311 a little bit on Twitter or whatever. But there was a pretty big, like, somebody asked me like what my first concert was on this like kind of public access TV show in Brooklyn that I was on, and I said that I went to my first real concert was a 311 concert, and I talked about how I really liked 311, and
you said it was good music to chill with your bros too.
Good music to hang with the boys, chill with the boys, yeah. And they liked that, and then so people on Nick's camp saw that because they were just listening to my music and shared it with Nick, and then Nick liked it, and then I got some backstage passes, some cool VIP backstage passes, still in my scrapbook, and I met Nick. Nick said after the show, and we took a cool photo, compared heights, and Nick was like,
he won, by the way. He's like the only person that's taller than me in the music business. He won, by the way. Go on.
Yeah, he's a tall guy.
And Snoop Dogg, right?
About the same with Snoop. I don't know. Can't remember.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't been back to back with Snoop in a long time. So, but
Peanut, our bass player, is taller than me. He's about your height. So, in case he's watching, I just have to be honest that I'm not the tallest person in 311. Anyway, go on.
All right. He wouldn't like that. But I said, or Nick was just about to like say, okay, well, nice meeting you. I got to go now. Send me some music. I'd love to play guitar on it. And I was like, okay, awesome. But really deep in my heart thought that he was just being nice, because I do the same kind of thing to people sometimes. And be insincere, I mean.
Yeah.
And but it turns out Nick is seemingly incapable of being insincere, and texted me and said, "Hey, I'm serious about the guitar thing." So I sent him some music, and he sends me back something with guitar on it, but not only guitar, but a little bit of vocals on there, and it just blew me away. And then it became my primary focus.
And that very first song was called Topanga State of Mind, which is just like I live in Topanga, and it's just like a mindset. I'm wearing my Topanga State of Mind shirt tonight. And but his track just evokes such a ethereal but nostalgic kind of.
I think you're pretty great
too. Siri just got activated. But
Siri thinks you're great.
Yeah. I need that more in my life. But anyway, yeah, that was the first song we did was Topanga State of Mind. And then it would just happen super easy where we were just sending stuff back and forth. And it was just really fun and easy and exciting for me to get into his totally unique process, which is total autodidact. Like he just works through experimentation and a ton of tinkering and just absorbing his way of making music, and just a lot of fun for me.
To get the timeline straight, were you aware of George's music before he started kind of openly claiming 311 as first concert, greatest band of all time, my favorite band, my life would have never been the same without 311?
No, I had a crash course in Vaporwave, and George Clanton is as soon as I heard about him. I just was like, I'll just check that out. But then I was like, well, this is cool. Reminds me of a certain time that almost never was, but it feels nostalgic, but it's futuristic and retro at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, George and I have had similar conversations about his music where it feels like a past that, while also being the future that never quite had occurred or something. I mean, the way that him and I have talked about it, it sort of feels like something that's placed in the late 90s, early 2000s, like when computers were first starting to, become more commercially available. And it was like, oh man, the future is going to be really exciting. And then it's just like, oh, just Facebook's collecting our data. And, that's just basically like where it ended up going. Like beyond that, what other sort of first impressions did you have from George's music? Anything that sort of goes beyond just kind of the nostalgic vibe of it?
His way of twisting sounds with saturation and time stretching to make it sound super analog-y and lo-fi, but still crisp enough to give you that energy. So I would pick his brain on what plugin did you use for this? How did you get this like this? And he would tell me, and then I would forget.
And, to move it beyond a musical realm for just a little bit, because George is the person who he is. I mean, what were your first impressions of George just as a person? He's a bit of, he's kind of an eclectic fellow, an eclectic soul.
Super smiley and positive energy. Like what George was saying earlier about Nick is incapable of being insincere. Like I don't click with people who are trying to be like super cool and reserved. I'm like, I coined the term excitable ones because I get excited and I show it, and I like genuine people. And that's what he is super genuine and positive and not like standoffish at all.
And, once you guys had collaborated on that track or, sort of came up with Topanga State of Mind, beyond that, like, where did the collaboration take you? Was this, did it continue to be this sort of file exchange type of thing, or did you guys bring it together in person?
Yeah. After that backstage meeting, I didn't see him in person again until many, many months later. Mostly it was just emailing back and forth. So it was definitely not the way I was used to working. And that's what I love, is to break up old patterns. Like we were talking before the show started about, I was telling George to order a different type of burrito and not eat the same one each time. And
not a chance.
Got a little offended, but anyway, I just love switching up the process that I'm working in. And so doing it remotely like that and adding stuff back and forth. And I would send him like a mumble where it was just nonsense, like scat singing. And then he would sometimes use that in the final track. I was like, ba da da da. I'm like, okay, that's cool. We can run with that.
Get in there, doesn't it? Sounds good. Whatever sounds good. I love it. Cool.
George, I want to ask you just straight up. Is this the record of the summer?
I wish that this was the summer that's appropriate for this record. You know, like this record wasn't really made for this summer. I guess it was made for what I wish this summer was.
Particular summer.
Yeah. So no, I think that the record for this summer would sound much more gritty.
Well,
this isn't
kind of like how your
Escapist album.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say kind of like how your music is sort of based on a past or a future that never was. This is kind of like almost like a summer that never was.
Bullseye. I've never been good at sort of being like on the cusp of whatever's happening in music or art or culture or the world. I'm definitely like, I started making chill wave after Pitchfork brutally murdered it, like years after. It was already too late. So, I just kind of rely on not even really making this album for, there was released a lot of singles before this album came out. So not even really making this album to be like for right now, but everything that I make, I'm thinking about, well, what's this going to sound like years from now? And I think that, people might, especially like people who don't like George Clanton fans who don't like 311 and 311 fans who don't like George Clanton, like, the people who say, I thought it said George Clinton and got excited.
There's something on this record for them too, you'd say?
Well, I think that as time goes on, when they realize that this album doesn't have anything to do with like 311 not making music or George Clanton not making music, it's just going to, blossom for them too. When people aren't being like, why isn't this a new? I want more rocking stuff. But you'll be glad that you have this in the end. Something different, a different flavor burrito.
Yeah, I mean, there was something that you just said that kind of stood out to me because while this record is very much indebted to Chillwave, I think a little bit more than Slide, I would say, and it's super summery in tone. It still feels like even though you have that shift and Nick obviously plays the role that he does, there still is, as you said, that huge note of escapism to it. And it's like you're giving your audience another world to kind of exist in, just kind of another place to kind of be in. How much thought kind of goes into that? Is there also just like kind of an element of being high to this record too? Like obviously you have the dogs on the front, get ready to light up the bong and everything. But like how deep do those layers go? Is it just like chilling with your bros, getting high with some dog babes? Or is it like this entire like, mental escape to exist in for the time that the record is playing?
We actually...
Go ahead, please.
Okay, we had a conversation about when the world started going to hell in a handbasket. Like, is this appropriate to put out this sort of escapism album that's not really that was written before all this like tension and racial reckoning that's going on and all this fear and we just said, well, it's done, and we didn't want to sit on it. So, but we did have a conversation about it does feel a little like out of step, but maybe people are ready for a little miniature vacation, and that's what songs can be. Even though we're kind of stuck at home and we're not doing our normal summer vacations and that kind of thing, maybe sitting out on your porch and just taking in the sunset, listening to this music is like perfect for this summer.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly feels like it's almost in a way like an emotional Band-Aid inadvertently, for everything that's happening now to an extent. I want to ask you guys, because you're such different personalities, it seems, from just, talking to both of you so far. And you both come from different realms of the music world, and you've both been successful respectively in different eras of the music world. I mean, what have been some of the biggest takeaways and things kind of gained from working with one another? I mean, I imagine Nick would have tons of experience to sort of bring to the table, while George has this blah, 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 scrambled up smiley personality and head, where he's sort of I don't know, George to me sort of sees the world through childlike eyes in a way. But give me some further insight into what you guys are kind of bringing to each other personally and artistically coming together.
Well, there was some times when I would pictured him like, because he would send me mix like number 27 or something like that, that I pictured he was just like slamming his head on the keyboard like if something's not working. Sometimes he would just be like super finding it, but other times he would be like, I just had to revert and go back like 15 versions ago because something wasn't working, and he's just all like going by feel. And but for me it was more like he would send me a track and I would just put it on, probably have like sports on or something like that, but on mute, and then just play guitar while I'm listening to his track. And my hands would just start finding something, finding a melody. And then I would pretty much just go to the studio and demo it the next day and send it to him. And then, so for me, it was more of a first draft thing. And like I said, he got into like draft number 30 and stuff like that. So, but I told him after I sent him that first track, Topanga State of Mind, and he just kept cracking me up with the wording of things that he was saying to me. And I was like, I'm just so glad I got into your delightfully weird vibe. And I didn't know if he was going to be offended, but that's always how it's been to me, that he just he does his own thing. And that's nice to see, you know what I mean? He's not an imitator. He's just being super genuine.
Yeah, I mean, sort of like to the ethos that you were speaking of earlier, it seems almost like reaching out, collaborating with George and taking this risk is sort of like your own way of switching things up artistically, creating a glitch in your own matrix. And, meanwhile, George is just still getting the same burrito. And maybe he'll sort of, take that to heart one day and he'll throw a wrench in the works and get it.
He's going to remember this conversation next time he's standing outside the burrito stand. I know it.
He will. And he'll actively ignore it.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, the other, most of the other options, it's like, well, do you want the bacon or do you want the chorizo? And I go, well, I'll have potato again. I don't want cactus, so I'm going to get the potato. The cactus makes your teeth squeal. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Squeaky teeth.
It's like when your hair is too clean and you squeaky clean. Yeah. Anyway, I think all that stuff that Nick was talking about, version number 30 and version number 15 and all that, that's got to do more with ineptitude than anything. It's just like, if I knew what I wanted to happen, if I knew how to, do the thing the correct way, there'd only be a few versions. So, Nick is sending me a version or two. He knows what he's doing. He goes, when Nick says, ba-da-da-da, he means it. And, that's the one. And, for me, I'm like, I don't know. And I'm not, I don't know music theory and I don't know how to make chords with my hands or anything like that. Everything is kind of accidental. And a lot of things like Driving in My Car was one of the last songs to be finished on the album. And that was a tough one for me and then in the end, it was like, well, I'm using a fake Macintosh that has a lot of computer errors, and the project got corrupted. And part of the project getting corrupted is one of the synthesizers switched its preset without me fiddling with it, and it sounded 10 times better. And I go, okay, well, there it goes. So, it takes me a long time to make music because even random fate is one of the tools that must be utilized in order to make something good. I think that I've got more patience and focus than any amount of talent. Or I'm a good curator of accidental problems.
Thank you for going into your process, George. I mean, that was more than you've given me before, and I love it. I want to tell you guys really quickly that you can throw some of your own questions for George and Nick into the chat or direct them at our mod Swar, and we'll be reading them, at least some of them, out to them in a few moments. I have a few more questions that I want to ask them myself, but get your questions thrown out there, get them ready, speak your mind on your own questions so that I can sort of relay them. And I want to ask you guys, sort of something about music business related, something that I've spoken on recently and kind of grabbed my attention as far as like a headline. And I think this will be interesting to hear from both of you. I'd love to hear both of your own perspectives separately here, because George in his own right is kind of the perfect picture of the modern musician in that he's wearing a lot of different hats, and he's his own promoter and producer and songwriter, and simultaneously is like label head, 100% Electronica, very entrepreneurial in his own right.
Has his own festival.
Yeah, has his own festival. I mean, kind of, doing everything. And Nick comes from a very different era of the music industry where business-wise, in terms of sales, tours, I mean, everything operated far differently. And recently, the Spotify CEO has been quoted as saying, hey, coming out with a record every 3 or 4 years, it's not doable. If you want to make money or be successful or enjoy life, or I guess not worry about starving to death, it's not enough. Do you sort of like vibe with that sentiment? Is this just kind of the new normal? Is that just the way things are? Or is this kind of Spotify and their CEO trying to justify an exploitative business model that musicians should be trying to reject? I don't know.
I mean, I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, I know you just got to go by feel, that you can't just be like, well, it's Thursday, I have to put out a song no matter whether it's good or not. You have to kind of, the muse pays off, is generous with you sometimes more than others. You know what I mean? Like sometimes ideas are, you're in a flow state, and other times it's just like, I'm just going to do something else now and wait till the ideas just start building up. So, I don't know. I wouldn't base my creative output on, what a streaming service guy said, but yeah, I mean, cycles have gotten way faster than they used to be. But like when 311 first started out, we put out our first record in 93, our second record in 94, and our third record in 95. And then toured on that for an extra, and then it was 2 years until our next record. So, but that was what felt right at the time. We were just so excited, and you have so many ideas, like so much energy at that age. And now for me, I have 3 daughters and different things that wouldn't make that possible to put out that many records,
You are Voyager, and then now with George Clanton.
Yeah.
What's next year?
That's what's so fun, is just waiting to see how things unfold. But certainly looking forward to getting back out on the road, and missing. We had a really nice tour planned to be out there with Incubus this summer, and but life had other plans, so just gotta roll with the punches and make the best of it, and trying to make this like a really special, good old days type time for me and the kids. Like it's just been us together and doing fun, different things that we've never done, board games and cooking weird things and playing stuff outside. So just got to make the best of it.
And yeah. George, I mean, you're the one who's essentially, coming up during this paradigm. I mean, you've business wise in terms of music. I mean, this is sort of the world that you have started in. I mean, do you feel like yourself need to be coming out with something every year, every other year? You're always working on something. It seems. I mean, is this just sort of the way things are, or do you feel like there's something to kind of be, I don't know, cringed at in terms of that statement, this insistence that musicians need to be kind of working their fingers to the bone in order to just kind of make ends meet?
Well, I mean, he's just speaking the truth. I think the problem is that, people feel as though he is in control of the future because he's, theoretically like saying you're getting paid this fraction of a cent and he has the power to change it, theoretically. I think it's, not in defense of him. I think it's more complicated than that. I think that the most compelling argument is, well, if you can't afford to pay musicians anymore, then how are you paying Joe Rogan, a gazillion dollars to sign an exclusivity deal?
Sure.
So that just kind of, you feel like, well, I understand you got to run a business, and a lot of people are getting Spotify for free, and that's nice. And also, I get to benefit from it because a lot of people are hearing my music who otherwise wouldn't because of the ease of access. Like when I was a kid, I had the 95 311 CD, but I only had like 7 other CDs, and I just listened to 7 CDs in the radio, and that was it. I didn't have access to somebody
all the music in the world.
Well, you're right, and particularly somebody who's as underground as I am. I think part of the new paradigm is that a lot more underground artists are being discovered. Maybe it's a little bit harder to make money or be successful, but at the same time, maybe for the people who take their fate into their own hands, which I identify as, maybe it's a little bit easier for a sort of middle class of musicians to exist in a time where that was, maybe that was not as possible earlier in history, and I see myself as that. It's like, when you're growing up, everybody says, oh, you can't be a musician. You'll never make it. What are the chances? It's such a fraction of everybody wants to be a celebrity or whatever it is, and you'll never make it. That's not a real job. And that's, what I was told by everybody. That's what everybody, I'm sure that Nick heard the same thing many times, and stubbornness pulls you through. But I think that's, the other side of the coin is I think that's less true today. I think if making it is, making being able to provide for a family, then maybe you can, maybe more people than ever can make it. You just have to work your ass off. That's the way that I feel. So I've always got my hand in some kind of cookie jar, Anthony, to answer your question. Obviously, I'm not like constantly releasing a ton of music because, like Nick said, the muse, you have to be there in the right place at the right time. You can't force it. You can't just make bad music to make a buck, because then it just cancels itself out. But you can, at any moment, design a T-shirt and put your T-shirt out, or decide that you're going to put more effort into your record label and put other people's music. Try to teach other people what you've learned, and try to help them become part of the middle class, the musician middle class. And, we're streaming on Twitch every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're streaming on Twitch.
Give us the URL as well, please.
It's 100 /100 100% Electronica.
Yes.
This week we're having TV Girl on. Speaking of ancient chillwave history, TV Girl is, my neighbors, close friends of mine, and the main singer gentleman from TV Girl's coming on this week. But anyway, I digress, Anthony Fantano. I think that Spotify is not where I make my most money. I have to hustle. But Spotify, I think in some ways, in many ways, it helps me hustle. I think that's where I'm getting my most plays. You can look up my songs on YouTube, and I'm not shit on YouTube, but I've got millions of plays on Spotify. So I have to attribute that to, the ease of access and the radio function or whatever it is. I'm not getting a lot of playlists, but people seem to be enjoying my music on Spotify, and you just have to try your best to kind of turn that into diehards who want to join your Patreon or buy a T-shirt to try to make a living.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like as long as you're willing to be creative and come up with your own revenue streams on the fly, I mean, all the most obvious and industry-connected ones are probably not going to pay out the most because they require the least amount of creativity to buy into. Okay, yeah, sure, just get my music up on this platform that everybody is on. But as long as you're willing to be industrious and, as you say, sort of take your own future in your own hands, and, sort of come up with what exactly people are going to be buying into rather than just kind of going along with what makes the most sense marketing-wise, then, sky could be the limit. As far as the Twitch channel and other things, I mean, before we move on to a few fan questions, do you want to update us any further on sort of the 100% Electronica empire? Because it does seem to have expanded at least a little bit since the last time we had a conversation. I mean, it seems like you guys are getting more ambitious in terms of artists on the label, content you're putting out, ways that you're trying to expand the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, since we spoke in your neck of the woods on that interview, I think that I was kind of doing almost like a proto 100%. We now have a festival called 100% Electronicon, which is tongue in cheek, kind of like everything that I do, play on Comic Con, right?
Right.
And we were doing a 100% Electronica tour, and that's how I ended up in your area. And that was a success. We took that idea and kind of, let's get everybody on the label under one roof, and then kind of expand it to this other kind of Vaporwave and Vaporwave adjacent group of people, and do the first Vaporwave like in live person festival. And that was a big success. We did 2 last year, and we were supposed to really slam dunk. Very good. Slam dunk this year. But obviously the virus effed us up. But, I'm pretty proud about, kind of we're selling more records and more T-shirts than we ever have before. We've got kind of a new, a new kind of stan, a new kind of fandom that's kind of following along with everything. And the thing that I guess that I'm most proud of is that, I kind of say, well, okay, here's the rule book. Here's how you can be a essentially unknown Vaporwave artist and quit your job. Here's start a Patreon. I'm not going to give it all away because, I've got to be cut in somehow to give away all the secrets. But,
so you're starting a consulting gig on the side on top of it.
I mean, in the modern era, what's a label to do? I think we're more than a record label of the old times. We're more like I keep saying we're more like a skate team. We've got our Thrasher shirt, and we sponsor artists, and there's no contracts, or anything. And I think that the sad side of what's so upsetting about and what got that conversation started with Spotify is like, well, you can't just be an artist anymore. You have to have a certain amount of business acumen. And those things just do not, I'm blessed to be born under the Capricorn moon or some shit. I don't know. I'll have to ask my Beyonce. But, you have to have a business acumen and be, a creative person and pull those two things together. You can't just be kind of like the airhead that I come across. I'm also kind of a business savant of some description, And I think Nick is actually a big inspiration because he's being modest over there, but Nick has his own empire. I have a 311 license plate holder, and they have the 311 CBD stuff and 311, it's like, who do you want to get your weed from? Well, shit, 311's got it figured out, So, they've got, he's got his hand. He's a business playboy himself. 311 has their own festival, their own cruise, all these things. And so I kind of look to that and I say, well, I see a ton of parallels between our fandom, not insofar as their taste, but insofar as the way that 311 interacts with their fans and being like showing them love and being like really kind of accepting of all different kinds of people. You know, you can be yourself, and there's just the positivity. And I feel like that's what I want to stand for. So I look up to Nick in that way, and I feel like that's kind of the community that, you know, if I've built a community, that's what I think, that's what I see when I look at who's showing up at our shows and our festival and who's in our chat room and stuff. You know, it's like, I'm really proud of that, and I think that they feel like this kind of inclusive vibe. Then that's just wanting to be more like 311, you know.
All right, we'll try to. I was holding back some tears on that end of that answer. So
me too.
Let me ask a few fan questions here. This person wants to know. Let me see. Cloud City wants to know, with this release, do you think Vaporwave is bound to break through the mainstream more? And I guess to extend off of that, do you think Vaporwave and you know, sort of the chillwave stuff that you've been working with on this record, does that have mainstream viability, or do you think that can sort of come back in a way? Because as you sort of said earlier, because when you sort of started in on it, Pitchfork had kind of already killed it.
You know, I don't think that this is a mainstream album, and I don't know. It depends on what you're calling mainstream.
You don't though? You don't?
I mean, I don't know that it. I mean, what's mainstream? Is 100 Gex mainstream?
I mean, it's true, but you know, it's not to like pigeonhole you here or anything, but like, if people can get into the dreamy neo psych blissful vibes of like a Tame Impala record, like, why couldn't they enjoy this sort of, you know, with the same kind of mass consumption sort of thing?
Well, you know, reach, I think is one thing. And, you know, just kind of like this, it would be like, I don't know. I don't think that either me or Nick, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but like, I don't think that we really approached this to make a mainstream album. This is definitely just something that we like did and had fun doing. And, you know, if, you know, I don't even think that, you know, 311 is like mainstream like that. I guess I'm just, you know, what's mainstream? Is Taylor Swift mainstream, or is like, you know what I'm saying? So I guess it depends on how. I think it'll make it more mainstream, and I don't think that this is kind of like, definitely the diehard Vaporheads are going to say this is not Vaporwave. You know, this has, you know, about as much to do with Vaporwave as Slide does. It's definitely inspired by kind of existing in that realm for so long, but I personally don't want to be pigeonholed by any genre confines. Like I feel like that's just boring. And, you know, and I think if genre didn't exist, then we wouldn't have like house music or like, you know, breakbeat hardcore is like my favorite, you know, like jungle is like my favorite type of music. Like I can always put that on. And I guess without genre, you wouldn't have that. And I wouldn't be able to just type jungle into YouTube and be happy every time. But like, I don't, you know, I feel like the shit's all over the place. So I don't know. I'm definitely getting off topic. Will it make it more mainstream? Fuck, I hope so. I don't know. You know,
I personally, I take offense. I think 311 is pretty mainstream. I remember how omnipresent those hits were back in the day. I had the 1995 tape, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers tape, and the Rage Against the Machine tape, and you know, I had all those tapes, and the Weird Al Bad Hair Day tape, and the Coolio tape, and the Biggie tape. I had all those tapes. So,
well, obviously, I didn't mean to say, you know, 311 is, you know, a secret band or anything, but I'm just trying to think like when I'm thinking about mainstream, I'm thinking about how like people say that Rihanna like one of the things that people in Vaporwave say a lot is that Rihanna kind of took Vaporwave for a year and used like a lot of these stylistic things. I think there was like a VMAs performance. And so I'm thinking like, you know, is this going to kind of, I don't know. I think that Vaporwave and its stylings have already kind of been milked for their kind of popular culture references that they can be used on the, you know, to kind of be like the cool new thing. I think that everybody's kind of already seen what Vaporwave has to offer as kind of like a visual style. And I guess that's why I'm trying to branch out and redefine it and try to explore ways that Vaporwave can kind of morph other elements of music. I think of Vaporwave more as kind of like, it's just like an underground movement. I think we're definitely strengthening that underground movement. People say Vaporwave is dead. That's just people who nobody likes their music anymore say that. Like, if Vaporwave was dead, then, you know, I wouldn't have 2,000 records, you know, stacked up shipping out today. You know what I'm saying? Like, go fuck yourself. Vaporwave is just like, you just gave up. So, you know, I think Vaporwave is going to be stronger, you know? I think of it like, it's like a new punk thing.
When you asked about, you know, what was our intentions, did we think it was going to do this or that? Like for me, I try and stay out of results and just focus on having a purely creative, from the heart, follow the muse, serve the song type of attitude when I'm making the music, and then stay out of like, begging for praise. You know what I mean? Like, it's, of course, we all like to be acknowledged and stuff like that, but I just know that we did our best on these songs when we did them, and then stay out of the results and just sort of let the cards fall where they may. Because like what you're talking about earlier with the rise of the internet, ooh, trippy, that, you know, of course, democratization of music is a good thing because it allows for more working class heroes like George. That's like a one-man operation. But then it also is this like instant feedback of like, okay, now I'm going to see what this person and this person and this person thinks of what I did. So it could drive you crazy. So I just am like, you know, stay out of that, you know, just use the internet, but not too much.
No, I love how you just kind of phrased that. And you're one of the few people who's been like industry connected, successful in the industry for a long time, and has actually acknowledged the democratization of, you know, sort of music and opinions, and acknowledged it as a good thing. In most cases, and I'm sure you're well aware, like people who are already kind of established in a way, absolutely hate it and have nothing but sort of ire for that. But this next question goes to you, Nick. Eric Beggs asks if the aesthetics of this record and sort of the musical world and background that George comes from, those sounds, those vibes, those styles, is that anything that you would be interested in incorporating in a future 311 album or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of what we were talking about a minute ago, of being trapped in a genre. Like, I always just want to break out of patterns. And I remember when we first got started, for some reason, everyone would be like, 311, isn't that a ska band? And I'd be like, no, that maybe part of one song was ska. But so, yeah, I always like to broaden the palette. And, you know, I think there was some dreamy and ethereal parts. Like there's a song called Mind Spin on the Sound System album, and the second half,
I love it,
is all this swishing, swirling sort of pad keyboards and like long, dreamy guitar notes and stuff like that. So maybe that was a little vaporwavy right there, like back in 1998 or 9, whenever we made that. But yeah, influences come in and out of our life, and you just have to be like open to it. Like, just follow the muse wherever it leads.
I co-sign that. That second half of Mind Spin is fucking amazing. I love it. No, no, no. I just, yeah. I mean, and if people say that, if anybody thinks that like we don't go together or like this doesn't sound like 311, which those comments are less frequent than I thought that they were going to be. But, we get them. And like Nick says, he doesn't read the internet. I need to take a page out of his book because I am glued. If somebody says something bad to me, I'm like, you're wrong. And here's why. I'm in there. So
last time we had a discussion, we talked about that too.
Yeah. And you're like zen on it too. People are like, Anthony Fantano, it was really fucked up how you killed all those people. And so they're just like, well, it happens every time. I just have to let it happen.
So I had this crazy thought this morning I have to share when I was jogging. I realized that I'm going to date myself right now. When I was in 1984, I got a Commodore 64 and it had the movie War Games where you put the phone on the cradle to do a dial-up modem and we would connect to these bulletin boards. So I have been on the internet since 1984 and I've never gotten into I've never trolled somebody. I've never gotten into an argument with somebody online. It's just something that there's things I want to say. Sometimes I get my feelings hurt like anybody else, but it's just not good for you to do. So I've been on the internet for a really long time, but I never want to get into the trolling zone because it's a pretty sad place to see people fighting and hearing about what's going on.
And just to say from my own personal experience, I mean, I've trolled people back and gotten into internet arguments and stuff. And there was sort of like a point in the existence of the platform where, that might have been like a, funny little community thing to say, he dunked on somebody, which, might even be sort of something that you're feeling a little bit now. But like once it moves beyond that, there's just too much attention on everything that you say and everything that you do, especially if it's a negative thing. And even if it is sort of funny and it is sort of something that maybe like your hardcore audience might get or might think is kind of cheeky, like you can't depend on everybody to get it. You know what I mean? Like to some people who are maybe a little bit more outside, a little bit more casual, it may just look like mean or like you're fighting and not always the best look.
Yeah, burning someone is not a good way to bond, even though it does create bonds when it's us two against that guy, but it's not a long-term good way to bond. There's so much tribalism and, team choosing going on that I just want to not feel that at all.
All right. Luke Dog asks, this is a 311 question. We have Nick, first of all, happy anniversary to the Transistor album. What is a memorable moment in recording that album that we may not know already?
So Transistor was the album where we had just come off the Blue album, self-titled album we put out in 95. And then and it was a very compact album that was like all rockers mostly, not a ton of diversity. And then we got embraced, but we got a buzz clip on MTV, and that's where all of a sudden our shows got way bigger. And
buzz clips, like holy shit! Like today it's like, is it on the Spotify playlist? Is it doing well on YouTube? Back then it was like, did it get a buzz clip? And everyone watching right now is like, what the fuck's a buzz clip?
And because they put this little 15-second buzz clip trailer before letting you know this is something special. This is what everyone's talking about. So once we got anointed with that, then things changed a lot. And like where we're talking about with fan feedback, a ton of people was like, 311 sold out. Just because I was like, we haven't changed our process. We're still making our own unique hybrid blend of music. And just because more people are into it doesn't inherently make us sellouts. But anyway, that was the dialogue of the time. But then on Transistor, we were like, let's just go freaky. Let's go as many different directions as we can. And it was the time of trip hop and Massive Attack and Tricky and Portishead. And so there was a lot of, and we were super into King Tubby and the dance hall of the day, which was like Shabba Ranks and stuff like that. So a lot of different directions at once. Of course, the hard rock and heavy riffs were in there, but and the funk and like, so that was a time of just let us go as in many. Don't worry about how it's going to be live, because that's why the Blue album was like, let's make them all songs that are going to be kick-ass live. And then we didn't worry about that in Transistor. And then when it came out, it was poorly received. But then after a while, people got into it. And now it's a lot of 311 fans' favorite album. But a lot of people are like, this is soft. These guys lost it. They used to be cool, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it stung because we felt really good about the album, but so that's kind of why what I was saying earlier about developing I hope you like it, but if not, it's okay. I know I did my best at the time, because you have to develop a bit of a thicker skin or you're going to go crazy 30 years into the music business.
Yeah, it almost makes me kind of reflect, because I just remember how big like that sellout narrative used to be back in the day, especially if, as you have just described, like you've changed your sound. Like even if that sound change wasn't to a super obvious commercial end, which obviously is not the case for that record. And even if you don't sort of see that commercial success immediately after, like the conversation still goes to, oh, you sold out. Oh, it changed. You're a sellout. And meanwhile, these days, it's almost like, you know, unheard of to not have 4 or 5 or 6 different genres or like subgenres breached on a new pop artist's, you know, hit record. And I mean, is that inspiring or interesting to you in any way to sort of see a lot of new records stylistically be a lot more or a lot less homogenous in tone and sound and style? Because it seems like back in the day you kind of needed to have a sound and focus on that sound, and the moment you deviate from that sound, your fans are going to be pissed. And it seems like, I don't know, maybe newer, younger fans are a bit more open to artists, you know, branching out into different styles. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that more randomness is allowed. It's cool to hear how like there's, you know, guitars in hip hop these days and a lot of different cross genre bringing in EDM elements and stuff like that. I just like trying new different things together, but it's a never ending journey. As long as you realize that there's new things to combine and new things to explore, then it's a never ending journey.
George, did you just sniff that water? Did you just give it a sniff?
It's water now. I wanted to see if what percentage water it was, and it didn't smell like water, so I'm not going to drink it. It's melted ice.
Got it.
It didn't smell like it was going to be good.
That's actually a smart move. Give it a sniff before you drink it, and if it doesn't smell good, if it doesn't pass the smell test, just give it up, put it down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought that you were paying attention to something else, and I could just smell my water.
No, I can see it. I can see everything you're doing on screen. But Thike Enrique wants to know what's your favorite DAW to use. So this person wants to know your favorite DAW.
We're talking about each of us.
I'm a Pro Tools guy.
Sure.
I'm like I was talking about my computer kind of being ancient and like thrown together and screwing up all the time. I'm still in Logic 9, which hasn't been updated in 8 years. And just everybody tells me, oh, you know, Logic 10 is amazing. And it's the same thing, but to me, it's not the same thing. I try to mess with it, and just moving like the play button from the bottom to the top is enough to piss me off. I'm just hard coded. You know, I'm a eat the same burrito over and over kind of guy.
You know, I can appreciate that. I did not move off of Final Cut 7 until there was an update where it just
wouldn't allow it.
It ceased to open. It didn't open anymore. Just would not open. So I didn't leave Final Cut 7 until then.
Exactly. I'm on High Sierra, so I can't. Because that's the newest, and it wasn't made to run on High Sierra, so it's unstable.
Yeah.
But like I was on Sierra or I was on Mavericks until like last year. And then they were like, we're not going to support Google anymore. And I was like, our Chrome, I mean, the browser. And so I updated to High Sierra and I was like, well, maybe I can like keep my email for another couple of years. But yeah, I mean, it's been a nightmare. Once you get something going, never upgrade. I think I'll be using this computer for the rest of my life from, as though it's like a tape deck or something. Like I'll always record music on it. It's got all my, I got all my tricks on one computer. You don't want to go and try to be creative and then be forced to try to figure something out. When you know exactly what you want to do, it's going to harsh the mel, bro.
Especially when you're talking about is the same computer that the file got corrupted and then it gave you the synth that
shit happens all the time.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, it's also inadvertently like your writing partner as well.
It's the ghost in the machine.
Yeah. It is indeed. Every album that I've ever done I've kept the same hard drive and I just keep cloning it to like now I've got a 4 terabyte hard drive. And then another 4 terabyte hard drive as overflow that I just keep cloning it. So I have all of my projects and everything from 2006, as far back as 2006, in various states of corruption.
Let me ask you guys before we wrap things up, where do we go from here essentially? Will you be collaborating more in the future, kind of going your own separate ways for a little while? I mean, is there going to be more solo work from George, more 311 stuff, more collaborative singles? Let us know what to look out for, what to expect in the immediate future.
Well, we've got a secret appearance coming up that we can't quite announce yet. And we were supposed to do his festival in New York, but that was of course canceled. So yeah. I was really looking forward to that. So I could definitely, once they have shows again, get into performing for this, side project as well. But because George's fans are super energetic and it was a really good vibe. When he did his LA version of it, I did like an unannounced appearance and rocked a couple songs with him, and the place, it was a lot of energy. It was really cool. And a younger demographic than what we usually have. So it was cool. It was more like the club shows of old that I was used to on our days coming up. So I'd like to do that again.
Well, yeah, Nick whispered in my ear, he says, oh, I haven't felt that way. And, I haven't, that was an interesting, the club show is an interesting experience. I haven't felt that way in a while, and I remember the 311 fans were commenting on the video, like, if I was 5 feet away from Nick Hexum performing, I would die. So it's cool.
But the funny thing is I was out there like setting up my gear and my pedal board and tweaking things and like nobody realized because it was his people and nobody had any idea that, hey, that's the guy that's on George's new music. So I could have just been some like gray-haired roadie as far as they were concerned.
It's like when the Kardashians go to Cleveland. To make you understand it, Anthony.
No, I yes. Thank you for linking it to the Kardashians, because that's actually the lens through which I view everything.
Touchstone.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. That's where we relate.
Exactly. Yeah, that's our thing. So beyond the super secret live thing that is coming down the pipe very soon that we can't give too many details about, anything else artistically going on with you, or 100% Electronica, around the corner that you can sort of give people a heads up about?
Well, your boy Matt Watson has kind of written a screenplay for a music video that I meant to twist Nick's arm into doing, but over? We don't know. I told him, I said, you need to like get this figured out. I can't present this fucking weed idea to Nick Hexum. We have to have something serious for him.
That's exactly how you should talk to him and treat him. Just say, get this the fuck out of my face.
Listen,
figure this out.
He needs a little bit of manhandling. He likes a tough a strong hand. Matt Watson, Nick, not you. This YouTube.
Yeah, this other
celebrity.
guy. And that's you. You're the Iron Fist.
Yes. We've created this really fruitful relationship over the past few weeks. He lives 5 minutes from me, and we've struck up a nice little friendship. But yeah, I've been working on this collab album. I've been working on a few songs. So yeah, I've got the new George Clanton record about half done. I'm probably gonna fart out a Tide You Over single, a little ways down the road here pretty soon. Not too far, but not too soon. And I really want to kind of, get that out. And it takes me so goddamn long to make music. I just, I want to hunker down and get that out. But, I didn't really get a chance to answer, like, what it was. The question was like something like, well, what do you, Nick, Nick, what have you gotten from this? And George, what have you gotten? And
answer it as you please.
One of those things was, I've never really collaborated with anyone before. And if we were in the same room, I mean, thankfully we started this project living on two opposite coasts. And I moved to LA shortly thereafter. But if we were in the same room, it's just not possible. The way that I have to wait for my computer to fuck up and finish the song for me, like I was saying, and just tweak little things until something pops in my mind, and the moon has to be in the right position in the sky, and all these different things have to be just so.
Yeah,
so
and it's got to be the 64th draft and all that stuff.
Exactly, and I've never thought that I could collab, and it took Nick kind of to say, I couldn't turn that down, could I? So
you can't.
I had to figure out how to make it work, and this really did work for me. And I got the confidence now, like if I can collab with Nick Hexum, I can collab with anybody. So I'm like, in Gene Dawson's DMs being like, let's set it off. And he says, tell Anthony Fantano hello for me.
Yeah, tell him hi back, and I could see the confidence. I mean, the way that you're approaching Matt Watson, you're like, get this out of here, fix this, do this. Do you know?
He's easy to strong arm.
Do you know who I am? I've worked with Nick Hexum. Like,
right. That's the way he treats me. I don't think that he realizes his ultimate YouTube power. He's like, oh my George, wow, and he's
well, what I love about Matt Watson is he does have a massive YouTube dick. He has a huge YouTube dick, but he views his his music video directorial contributions as sort of like him starting a new seed. He's trying to grow that from the ground up in its own way, and he's not trying to approach it like I'm the YouTube guy, I've got a big YouTube, take me seriously as a music video director because I got a big YouTube. He wants his ideas to speak for themselves, not his not his reputation. So if he's approaching it in a humble way, and that's respectable.
True that.
All right, well, you guys have been great. Thank you very much for, shedding a lot of light on this collaboration and shedding further light on yourselves and everything that you guys did together, and talking to us about music, life, and everything beyond. You two have been great. And you two have been my first double interview. So this is the first time I've talked to two people at one time. So, a lot of firsts for all of us.
This is a big...
It's gone swimmingly.
Oh, thank you.
And I just real quick want to give a shout out to all the 311 fans. People, they may not know that we have a multi-part series called 30 Years of 311 coming out on 311.com, where it's kind of like a documentary multi-part series. And we're going to be streaming some vintage concerts that have never been put out before, and a bunch of cool stuff that, so we can virtually celebrate our 30-year anniversary. We were planning on doing 50 shows in 50 states as a way to celebrate. Can't do that, but we're going to do the best we can. So we miss our people.
George's face right now is the face of every 311 fan watching this. He's like, yes,
it's crazy.
Cannot fucking wait for that for all those for all that concert footage. George is just biting his lip and smiling. He's so fucking psyched.
Maybe I missed it, but I'm trying to show enlarge to show detail 3 to negative Gemini. The girl that lives in my house.
Yeah.
We're going to put that out too.
Oh, okay.
I saw it. It
was at the premiere. The only one time it was played. Anyway, good times.
Good times. Well, you guys have a good one.
Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Anthony.
You too.
All right.
See
Bye.
you later, George.
Bye.
Bye.